Ford Philippines finally launched the next-gen Ranger Raptor last month. At 2.3 million pesos, it's about 400,000 or about 16% more expensive than the Ranger Wildtrak 4x4. In this video, we're gonna talk about the differences between the two models and whether that price difference is justified. So which one is worth our money? Let's find out. The Ranger Raptor is unique in this segment in that it's the only pickup that's modified to this extent with off-road performance in mind. The suspension is almost entirely revamped. The chassis, the tires, everything works together to achieve one purpose: to be the most badass off-road pickup that you can buy in the Philippines. Compared to other supposedly performance-oriented pickups like the Hilux GRS, there are a lot more changes to the Ranger Raptor. The Ranger Wildtrak, on the other hand, is designed to be a more civilized city or highway dweller. It's one of the most high-tech pickups that you can buy in the Philippines, with all the modern driver assist and active safety features that you can get on a modern car. The differences between the two are substantial. Let's start with the exterior. When you see a Ranger Raptor, there's no mistaking that it's a Ranger Raptor. The visual differences are very obvious. The fenders are different. The Ranger Raptor is 4 inches wider than the Wildtrak, and that extra width is not just cosmetic. The track, or the distance between the left and right wheels, is actually wider on the Ranger Raptor. Now, those meaty fenders also house the biggest tires in its class. The Ranger Raptor gets 17-inch lightweight wheels wrapped in 285/70 R17 tires. So that's almost 33 inches in diameter. For comparison, the tires of the Wildtrak are 255/65/18s or about 31 inches. So the tires of the Raptor are 2 inches bigger in diameter and about 1.2 inches wider. Also, the Wildtrak 4x4 comes with highway terrain tires, which are excellent on the highway but not very good for off-road use. The Ranger Raptor comes with all-terrain tires with the most aggressive tire pattern in its class, which is excellent for off-roading. The Ranger Raptor also gets the FORD grille, which looks a lot more imposing than the grille of the Wildtrak. The bumper of the Ranger Raptor is attached to the frame and is separate from the body to allow for some body flex without damaging anything. And of course, the Ranger Raptor gets the obligatory Ranger Raptor badging and decals. Now, one thing that the Ranger Raptor loses is the box side step, which you get on other variants of the Ranger. On the inside, the main difference between the Ranger Raptor and the Wildtrak is that the Raptor gets paddle shifters, while the Wildtrak 4x4 doesn't. The paddle shifters allow you to manually shift gears without taking your hands off the wheel. The Ranger Raptor also gets an electronic shifter, which you don't get on the Wildtrak. The Ranger Raptor gets different seats with a mix of suede and leather. Aside from those, the other differences are cosmetic, like the orange accents and the Raptor badging. While the Ranger Raptor and the Wildtrak 4x4 have the same 2-liter diesel engine that puts out 210 horsepower and 500 Nm of torque, the chassis and the suspension of both vehicles are quite different. The Ranger Raptor has longer aluminum suspension arms, which result in a wider track and longer suspension travel. It has 2.5-inch Fox coilovers at the front and, more importantly, at the back. The Wildtrak 4x4 uses a stiffer leaf spring setup, which is good for carrying heavy loads, but not so good for comfort or jumping over ramps. The Ranger Raptor also has a Watts linkage at the back for increased cornering performance. The Ranger Raptor also has plenty of under-chassis protection. It has a 2.5mm bash plate at the front to protect the oil pan. It has protection for the fuel tank, protection for the steering rack, etc. The chassis of the Ranger Raptor has also been strengthened so it can take punishment without flexing or bending. It should be noted though that mechanically, our Ranger Raptor is different from the Australian Ranger Raptor. They get a 3-liter V6 engine and adaptive suspension, which we don't get on our Ranger Raptor. But even with these downgrades, our Ranger Raptor is still mechanically superior to the Wildtrak 4x4. The first gen Ranger Raptor had one of the most comfortable suspensions that I've tried on a car. It was even better than SUVs like the Everest, and even better than a lot of crossovers and sedans. And the new Ranger Raptor has a very similar suspension to the old one. We got to drive the new Ranger Raptor on some pretty rough terrain during its launch, and it soaked up those bumps like they were made of pillows. Now try to imagine going over a road hump at 20 kph on a regular car. I can't imagine it being pleasant or uneventful. Now this is the Ranger Raptor going over a hump the size of a small hill, going airborne and then hitting the ground again at 60 kph. And I barely felt the landing. The ride quality of the Wildtrak is better than any of its competitors from other brands, but it's still no match to the Ranger Raptor. In rougher terrain, it does bounce quite a bit, a side effect of the stiffer rear suspension. One of the disadvantages of the Ranger Raptor's softer rear suspension is that it has less payload capacity than the Wildtrak. The Wildtrak has a payload capacity of 1,000 kilograms. Now Ford didn't give the exact payload capacity of the diesel Ranger Raptor, but a quick search online shows about 650 kilograms. Now while that's less payload capacity than the Wildtrak, that's still enough to carry 6 baby elephants. So unless you're going to use the pickup for hardcore hauling, or you need to carry 7 baby elephants, I think 650 kilograms is going to be more than enough. One of the things that Ford vastly improved on the new Ranger Raptor is the tech. The previous Ranger Raptor was actually behind the Ranger Wildtrak when it comes to high-tech features. It didn't have ADAS features like adaptive cruise control, lane departure warning. The current gen Ranger Raptor is the most feature-packed variant of the Ranger. It has everything that the Wildtrak has and more. It has adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, autonomous emergency braking, a 360 camera. In addition, it also has trail control, which is like cruise control for off-roading. It also has paddle shifters and an e-shifter, which the Wildtrak lacks. The Wildtrak 4x4 is not a bad off-road pickup. It has a rear differential lock and plenty of traction control modes for different conditions. We took the Wildtrak to Zambales and it performed quite well over some loose sand and light mud. If you have to go over deeper mud though, that's where you may feel the limitations of the highway terrain tires. But with a tire upgrade, the Wildtrak 4x4 should be good enough for light to moderate off-road driving. The Ranger Raptor though is on a whole nother level when it comes to off-road performance. Its softer rear suspension means that you won't bounce around so much when going over rough terrain. Its longer suspension travel means that you can do jumps like this without bottoming out. And you can get better articulation when going over uneven surfaces. Its higher ground clearance means you can clear more obstacles, and its huge all-terrain tires are a necessity when going over loose terrain. The Wildtrak 4x4 is significantly less expensive than the Ranger Raptor. Now, you can modify a Wildtrak so it would perform similarly to a Ranger Raptor. A decent set of wheels and 33-inch tires would probably cost you about 150,000 pesos. If you want a decent suspension lift, it'll cost up to 100K. If you want Fox shocks with the suspension arms to go along with them, prepare to spend a small fortune. While you can modify a Wildtrak 4x4 to perform similarly to a Ranger Raptor, it'll cost you about the same or even more. Plus, modifying the suspension would also void your warranty, and that's something that you'll have to take into consideration. The Ranger Raptor is the best off-road pickup in the market by a huge margin. But not everyone is gonna need the same level of performance as the Ranger Raptor. For those who just want the look and just enough capability to do some light to moderate off-roading, the Wildtrak 4x4 with a set of all-terrain tires would be enough. For those people, the 400,000 peso price difference may not be worth it. But for those who want the absolute best off-road performance in a pickup, that 400,000 pesos is definitely gonna be worth it.